So, dear students, today I'm going to discuss one of the important poems of 18th century, and that is The Rape of the Lock. This poem is prescribed in your poetry paper, and for those viewers who are watching this video from the different parts of the country, they will also be benefited by this video because in most of the universities this text is prescribed. So this video lecture is based on the introduction to the poem, and then in the following video lecture I'll be discussing the poem in quite detail. So The Rape of the Lock, which is a famous poem by Alexander Pope, it was first published in 1712. Then Pope reworked on it and published again in 1714. This poem is the best example of a mock epic, and it satirizes upper class in London at that time. The story focuses on the central character Belinda, whose lock of hair is cut off at a social gathering. Now, this subject, when we say that a lock of hair was cut down, it seems to us very trivial, very insignificant, very unimportant. But Belinda is, outraged that her lock of hair has been cut by the Baron. In The Rape of the Lock, Pope uses Belinda and the Baron to mock two of his acquaintances, Arabella Fermor and Lord Peter. These are the two real life characters, and Belinda, the character of Belinda is based on the real life character of Arabella Fermor, and the character of Baron is based on the character of Lord Peter. The poem follows the events of the night leading up to the Belinda's, what she said, horrific loss. Pope wrote The Rape of the Lock in response to a request made by his friend John Caryll, a prominent Roman Catholic of that time. Caryll explained that his friend Lord Peter had cut off a lock of Arabella Fermor's hair. Ever since the incident, the families had been fighting with each other. In order to make light of the situation, Pope wrote The Rape of the Lock. So it is clear that it was actually Caryll who requested Pope to write a work in order to laugh at this situation when Lord Peter cut the lock of the hair of Arabella Fermor. Now, the lady Arabella Fermor, she was born into the upper class family, and she was the daughter of Henry Fermor. Known for her beauty, she was the belle of the London society in the early 18th century. After telling her family about the incident involving her lock of hair, they were offended and became estranged from their once good friends, the Peters. Now in Pope's poem, Belinda represents the character of Arabella Fermor, as I have just told you. I have told you two important dates, 1712 and 1714. Now, but this poem, he started writing this poem in 1711, but it was published in 1712. And after that, it went through many revisions, and then it came into the final shape. This poem was published with two cantos in the year 1712, and then in 1714, Pope added few more cantos, and in 1714, with added supernatural machinery, it was published with 5 cantos. Now, if we talk about the event of the poem, the event in the Rape of the Lock takes place in the early 18th century on a single day. The action takes place in London and the story begins at noon. We find the description in Canto 1 at Belinda's residence as she prepares herself for a grand social event. The scene moves to a boat carrying Belinda up the Thames. She is compared to Cleopatra, who travelled in her barge. Canto 3 to 5 are set in Hampton Court Palace, a former residence of King Henry VIII on the outskirts of London, except for one scene in Canto 4 that takes place in the cave of the Queen of Spleen. Now, as I told you about because whenever you are going to discuss some important work, you talk about source. Source of the poem, I have already told you that this is based on the actual incident in which a British nobleman called Lord Peter cut off a lock of hair from the head of a lady called Arabella Fermor. This resulted in an open battle between the Peter and the Fermor families. It was Pope's friend John Caryll who persuaded Pope to compose a literary work satirizing the absurdity of the dispute. So this poem was written by Pope at the request of his friend John Caryll to laugh at this trivial incident. Now, Caryll persuaded a Pope, and the result was this great satirical poem of literature, the best example of Augustan verse satire. Pope's satire is based on specific personalities of the time. I have just told you that the character of Belinda is based on the character of Arabella, and Byron's character is based on Lord Peter, and Sir Plume's character is based on George Brown, a relative of Arabella's mother. Pope also drew upon ancient classical sources, mainly the Iliad and the Odyssey, to develop his poem based on models of heroic style, epic tone. He consulted the text of medieval and Renaissance epics. As I told you in the beginning, that this poem is the best example of the mock epic text. And when you say it's a mock epic poem, the meaning is that it follows the tradition of the epic, but the subject matter is very trivial. Now, while the original version of Rape of the Lock achieved what it set out to do, it received a very good response from the side of the readers. Very enthusiastic response from public and critics alike. Joseph Addison, he advised Pope not to enlarge it, not to modify it, because he was happy with the first publication, which was brought out in 1712. But Alexander Pope revised it, added few more cantos, and published it in 1714. Because Pope wanted to make it look more like an epic, and that is why he added supernatural machinery in his last editions. So it came in this form which we are reading. Now, as I told you that this poem is the best example of the social satire. This poem is the best example of mock epic. I told you about the source. But before I come to the detailed analysis of the poem, let me tell you some important characters of this poem. Then I think in the following video lecture, you will understand the text very well. Now, the first character, Belinda, As I told you that the character of Belinda is based on the historical character of Arabella Fermor, who belongs to an aristocratic Catholic family. Belinda is the example of the vain young women of the time who were obsessed with their appearance and beauty and tried their best to attract young men without thinking the consequences. The rape of the lock of hair is significantly symbolic of the violation of chastity that can result in such cases. Then we have the character of the Baron. The character of Baron is based on the real life character of Lord Peter, who offended Arabella Fermor and her family by cutting off a lock of her hair. Now, then we have Karen. I told you about the character of John Carroll, who was a friend of Pope and also of those two families, Fermor family and Peter family. And it was he actually who requested Pope to write the poem. So we have Belinda, we have Baron, we have Carroll, we have a goddess also, the Muse. And the Muse is actually invoked in the beginning of the poem, and it is an epic convention actually to invoke god or goddess for the successful completion of the work. We have also the character of Shock. We have Shock, Belinda's lap dog. Very interesting it is when you read the text, you'll find out the role of the lap dogs and how closely lap dogs are associated with the character, especially with Belinda. We have the character of Ariel. So Ariel is Belinda's guardian self. This is actually the phrase which is used in the poem. He supervises the army of invisible protective deities. There are other selves also. There are other spirits also. He is in charge of those spirits, and those spirits are actually protectors of Belinda. We have the character of Umbriel. Umbriel is a chief gnome who travels to the cave of Spleen and returns with bundles of sighs and tears to aggravate Belinda's vexation. Then we have the character of Brillant. It is the name of a sylph who is guarding Belinda's earrings. Actually, what happens when Belinda, saw a dream that some disastrous consequence is going to happen. So it was Ariel actually who became very cautious, very alert, and assigned the responsibility of protecting Belinda. So a sylph who was given the responsibility of caring for the earrings of Belinda was Brillant. Then we have Momentilla, the sylph who was assigned to guard Belinda's watch. Then we have Crispissa, the sylph who is assigned to guard Belinda's favorite lock. So, a different kind of, sylphs given the different kind of, duties. We have the character of Clarissa, a woman in attendance at the Hampton Court party. She lends the Baron the pair of, scissors with which he cuts Belinda's hair, and later delivers a moralizing, lecture. So these are some characters of the poem. So if you just read the poem in the light of these characters, and also the theme, the source, the events, the background, then I think you can better understand the poem. So in one more lecture, I'll give you a detailed analysis of the poem, The Rape of the Lock. Thank you very much.